This is Middlesbrough, located in the northeast of England on the planet Earth. It's home to the Parmoor and the Transporter Bridge, as well as, of course, myself. I'm Andy, I'm 31 years old, and earlier this year I was diagnosed with autism. I'm Andy. I'm a no-budget filmmaker, award-winning. I've been making short films for over 10 years now, but I've decided to venture into the world of documentary. This has come from my autism diagnosis I received earlier this year. But what struck me the most was when they told me I actually am autistic. They said, take a moment, let it sink in, and if you need to speak to anyone, we're here to help. This didn't make sense to me because I figured, who do I need to talk to? Why do I need to talk to anyone? I've been expecting this result for years. I'm fine. But it wasn't until a few days later where it actually sank in and I started to question things like, who am I? How much of me is me? How much of me is autism? Autism, a developmental disorder of variable severity that is characterized by difficulty in social interaction and communication and by restricted or repetitive patterns of thought and behavior. People tend to think autism exists on a sliding scale, whereas really it's more like an equalizer board, where some people's dials will be set in place, others will move up and down depending on the situation or various other factors. Everyone's dials are set differently. There is no cure for autism, and you do not grow out of it. I get anxiety with what other people would generally call everyday things, like going to work, popping to the shops. In order to reduce this, I have to plan things in advance, like routes, times, etc. When I'm anxious, I struggle to sleep, to relax, to even focus on something that isn't the thing that's pressing on my mind. It gets to the point where there's that many thoughts firing off. It's like my brain is on fire. Avoiding eye contact. Now, this isn't something that I do consciously, and it's not even a thing that I always know I'm doing, but other people do notice it. And to be able to maintain eye contact, I need to properly focus on it, which then has a knock-on effect to focusing on the actual conversation that's currently happening. I've always been artistic, whether it be drawing, painting, photography or filmmaking. This is helped by my ability to hyper-focus and lose myself in a project. I like to have things uniform and as I feel they should be. So my DVDs, books, etc. I'll go to the effort of collecting all the same editions of a series of something so they all match. This will even go to the point of where I might re-buy something just so it matches the other edition that I have the majority of. My collections must be unblemished. Example, if I go to the shop to buy a DVD, I'll pick up all of them off the shelf, I'll analyse them all to make sure which one I pick is going to be the perfect one. If there isn't a perfect one there, if they've all got some form of material damage, then I'll just leave with none. For as long as I can remember, I've always had tics. Now, these are compulsions. They just happen, you can't control them. Mine, amongst others, are excessive sniffing, clearing my throat, and twitching my face. I can become quite obsessive with my interests. My major interest is TV and film. And I don't just collect DVDs, Blu-rays and books based on films. I'll collect things like memorabilia and props, or even action figures, Lego, board games, as long as they're all based on films or TV shows that I like. Integrity. Now, I find it difficult to tell lies. I get quite anxious about it, and to be honest, if I told a lie, you'd probably be able to tell I was lying anyway, because I'd be setting off all my tics and stuff. Plus, I'm just not a good liar. I make the truth sound like a lie. I'm also a bit of a stickler for rules, so COVID left me feeling a bit frustrated really, because I tried to adhere to the safety regulations, so sticking to the one-way system and stuff like that, whereas I'd go to Asda and someone else would be walking the wrong way down the aisle. And to me, rules are there for a reason. I like my rules and I like my routines. Social skills are a big issue for me. I struggle in social situations. I'll sit there quiet or even silent, which I feel comes across rude or ignorant to others around me. I tend to struggle with small talk, but if you mention TV or film, I'll start waffling on and I'll just overtake the conversation. I find if I'm in a social situation but it's just with my close circle of friends, then I'm generally quite relaxed. But if there's someone from outside my close circle of friends, so could be a friend of a friend or even a friend who maybe I don't talk to as much as my close circle of friends, then I'll struggle to engage with the conversation. I struggle with some sensory issues. These are noise and busyness. So I can get really overwhelmed with situations that have these factors, and then as a result I have to remove myself from the situation to give myself recovery time. Otherwise I could go into just shut down. Now a shutdown is a bit like a meltdown, but it's more internalised rather than external. What's generally considered a minor change can really affect my mood. So I could be having a fairly decent time and then there'll be some sort of change to the routine, and for me it'll just absolutely sour the rest of the day. I'll find myself completely focusing on this negative and not be able to move on. Although autism can't actually be cured, I do take medication for my anxiety and my depression. Now, these don't completely remove the issues I have with anxiety and depression. What they do is they just sort of take the edge off and make me be able to get on with the day a bit easier. And finally, my favourite topic, my mass collections. And I don't just collect a little, I collect a lot. It's borderline hoarding really. Nah, I'm lying to myself. It is hoarding, but there isn't a H in autism. As I'm a pessimist, I always tend to focus on the negative side of what life has to throw at me, but through this documentary I want to learn and focus on the more positive aspects of being autistic. To do this, I'm going to talk to other autistic people and people with an autistic connection. So this weekend's been a bit of a struggle for me because we've come away for a haven holiday, like a family holiday, so it's me, Gabby the kids, Gabby's mum and stepdad, and obviously with my social issues it made me feel really uncomfortable and awkward all weekend, and it's been hard. My teeth have been hurting, I've been grinding my teeth quite a bit, so they're hurting a fair bit, especially when I wake up. They hurt quite a bit, so I must be grinding quite a lot in the night. But today's the last day, so it's a bit of a relief that I can get home to my safe space. This documentary is really pushing the boundaries of my comfort zone and my social skills. So to help me out with the interviews, my partner Gabby is coming along just to help the natural flow of conversation. Say hello, Gabby.
Hello. suppose it means that I was just different to everyone else. But actually learning from it, I find that it's different in a good way. You know, it's not all negative as some people think. Oh, you've got this scary thing. It's not. It can be very positive for me, and it gives me skills that other people don't have. Being an artist, I look at the world differently.
Right.
But I look at the world slightly different to most like neurotypical people. So I can see things in a different way, and that really helps when you're an artist to have something different to say.
Yeah.
Wow, that's a difficult one. Well, autism means my son, Isaac, who he was diagnosed when he was just 2-year-old, I think, but we knew for a long time before that. And I suppose it just means him to me. It just means that person is different, you know. There's nothing bad or good. It's just they're different. They see the world in a different way, and I think that's what autism really is.
I suppose to me, autism means creativity and a different way of thinking about things. It means people who have a different perspective and something different to offer. It also means, I think, intelligence and focus on certain subjects and topics and things that focus and that creative spark sort of zones in on one subject area, and people with autism can like really show you things. They have that passion about something, which is really important.
It's about intelligence. You know, like, very intelligent young people, very hard work for the families, because, you know, an autistic child will go to bed at 11, maybe even later, and then be up at 4 in the morning. So if you can imagine, you know, parents, you know, having to endure that. And one of my clients was a single parent. She lived on her own, and she had a daughter as well. And that was very, very difficult for her. You could see it in her face, you know, absolutely shattered. But the love she has for her child is incredible. And I know a couple of people like that who have autistic children and live on their own and wouldn't have it any other way.
Autism, I distinguish between autism and being autistic. Autism to me is a construct, a label. Being autistic to me is my identity. And it's a culture, and there's a big difference. Autism to me is sort of something that professionals have come up with, but it's not who I am.
I've not been diagnosed with anything, but I know that I am part of the same community as people that have been diagnosed as having autism or being part of that community. It's the older I've got, the more I've realised that it's like, feels like home in a way. It feels like the place where most of us are sort of talking the same language. It's really important that it's a community rather than a diagnosis.
I think it's probably everyone says about the hyperfocus, but I definitely think that's one of the key things. It's like once that starts me, I have to finish it, and it could mean that I'll make about 15 paintings in a week, and you know, then I'd have like a full week of stuff. So I'd say like it helps get things done, because once I start, I have to finish.
Love of patterns, detail. I love, this is perfect spot, this way of watching. I love just sitting there and just watching the movements and the patterns, and my brain just focuses in on that. I like that I get sort of accept joy from daft things that nobody else sees. Yeah. And that, I think, empathy and care for other people, even though sometimes it doesn't come out right.
I think mine's very similar actually. I think it's observation of just seeing things all the time, like constantly going orchestral, or like look, I like driving home and going look at that, and just I think just that, like I feel like though it's like that constant things bring me joy all the time that other people are like what, but like constantly finding joy, I think in natural stuff or interesting stuff.
Caring for autistic people is a wonderful experience. They teach you an awful lot. They're able to bring things to you that you might not have ever thought of before. People with autism are very creative, so they teach you a lot. I've learnt a lot from the people in my life who have autism, and I find it really, I wouldn't say rewarding, I find it really engaging and interesting, and that unique perspective and that little spark of like focus and obsession can like really bring something to your life as well.
Looking after autistic children is very rewarding. When you take them out for days out, you're walking along and they see something that us mere mortals, us ordinary people wouldn't find interesting, like a shell or something like that, and they're picking it up and they're looking at it, and we talk about it, talk about where it comes from, that sort of thing. Can be really, really interesting.
And it's the joy more than anything, like the pure joy that's on his face pretty much all of the time. And learning how to look at the world in a different way, noises and movement and brightness, and just there's a lot of different things, a lot of different factors that Isaac will notice that we won't, so we have to pay attention to those things. We've learned to appreciate animals a lot more. I was never really a big animal fan. We go and feed the horses behind the power station all the time, because there's loads of horses down there, and we'll go like every single week, and yeah, he's just got a love for things that are not what I would have been like when I was a kid. I was always into toys and that kind of thing. He's not bothered. He just, life is big enough for him.
I've learned that autism isn't a disability, it's a neurodivergence. It is a different way of looking at things, a different mode of thinking, but it's no more or less than what the conventional person has to offer. I've learnt that autism touches a lot of people as well. It's common, and it's not something to ever be afraid of. It's not something that so people sometimes have preconceived notions about people who have autism, and the sorts of, some people consider it a disability, whereas I wouldn't think of it that way.
They can be challenging. Autistic people, can be challenging, but it can also be, very uplifting and rewarding.
I'm learning patience because I don't have any at all. I'm like, my wife could tell you that I have zero patience, and I'm learning them at the moment. I have to be patient with Isaac, because I think there was there's the 8-second thing. When I say Isaac, I wait 8 seconds and then if I don't get a response, then I'll say Isaac again, and so that's a little bit of concession for me, because I'm normally like, Isaac, come on, let's go, do this, blah, 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 blah. It's too quick for him. His brain's not functioning that fast. Although his brain functions way faster in other circumstances. You can just, especially on an iPad or something like that, he knows how to use those things better than me. But yeah, I would say the patience is sort of the most important thing that I've learned.
Collecting things.
Oh, yes.
is so I've got a bird obsession. So I've got a bird, and I've got a house full of bird things, and ceramics, which drives my husband insane, because I collect vintage plates, and he's like, wow.
Teacups.
Teacups. Oh yeah, I've got a great big teacup cabinet.
I've even got down when I was thinking as a kid, I collected soaps, I collected everything.
Oh,
I collected
erasers as a kid, erasers.
It even got down to serviettes from cafes, off trains.
Yeah.
Isaac's he's obsessed with Disney. He's just written a Disney book. It's a Lion King mixed with lots of other things. I could say his name all day and he wouldn't turn his head. But you would put the Disney opening theme on, that way the Magic Castle thing, and he would come running from upstairs. You know, he would know immediately that there was some Disney going to be on.
It just brings me happiness. And I've got a craft room, that is nightmare. I've got a nightmare craft room that's like this. So unfortunately, collecting craft stuff and craft books is a problem. But for me, it's a positive because I love that. It makes me really happy.
There's nothing better than like a basket full of threads and buttons.
Yeah.
And it's just the possibilities, and it just makes me happy. For me, it's like having things around me as memories.
Yeah.
It's parts of memories and feelings that often I can't recall things. And it's like having friends around you. It's comforting. And my daughter's the same. And she's like, even if the dog chewed off the Barbie doll's legs, you can't get rid of it because, well, how would you feel?
Yeah.
If someone got rid of you? Because you didn't ever it is a true, and people don't realise that how much emotion is connected sometimes with things. Yeah.
It's quite interesting actually because a couple of the children I've looked after, both of them are boys, and they have this fascination with taking a picture of like a video they're watching and taking that picture, rewinding it and taking the picture again. One other used to love this song. It's a brilliant song, you know what I mean, a classic song. Do you know the Beatles, Hey Jude? Yeah? But in a 2-hour session, he would listen to it 150 times, but he would only get up to a certain part and then he would want it back again. So it would just be on a loop, maybe about a minute into the song, and it would be repeated.
Yeah, there definitely is. I think people with autism, like I've said before, are exceptionally creative. They bring that focus and passion to certain subjects. Like if you look through history, it's like arguably some great thinkers and like great people, like Nikola Tesla, for example, would nowadays be diagnosed with a condition underneath the autistic spectrum umbrella. And now because we slap that diagnosis on people, like, oh, you're this, you're that, the other, it puts people into boxes, and it really is just a creative thing. I mean, I asked my brother his opinion on his autism and how he feels about it, and he said he loves it and it's part of who he is, and like and he feels like it adds to his uniqueness and his personality and things like that. So that's like really important that people who have autism like value themselves and understand what a positive thing it can be and how it can drive them to have that passion about things that can make brilliant things in the future, you know.
I would say that there's some amazing people. I was doing my own little project on autism, and I found a list of the most amazing autistic people. People like H.P. Lovecraft, Andy Warhol, Lewis Carroll, Tim Burton. Just because you're autistic doesn't mean you can't do amazing things. In fact, I know some autistic people who are always doing amazing things.
Yeah, it's mint. It's a nightmare as well, and it's just a different outlook. You know, it's tough, certain things, but just, and this is only my personal experience, having such a joyous child. It's brilliant. Yes, he has his moments, but the majority of the time, just the wonder on his face of things.
I think it's connection. The positive message is finding those safe spaces, be there online, be there through interests. It is connecting with other neurodivergent autistic people, and that is key. that once you do that, you realise you can find a bit more of a place. And it's also realising that it isn't just for you to change, it's also for other people. And sometimes the problem is with others, not us.
Some of the people in the neurodivergent community think out of the box. Means that we have a lot of amazing things that we have, and I think if we weren't, you know, if we weren't sort of encouraged, then we wouldn't be encouraged to have, you know, all these amazing things that come from having a mind that doesn't necessarily think in the same way as everybody else is. I think it's like a really big, you know, it's a huge positive. So in the creative industries, it's really important that you've got, that you can think in a different way. I think that's like, you know, to be celebrated, really.
So we're back home now, and today ended up being, I think, the worst of the whole sort of holiday, because my son Clark, we believe is also autistic, because we both have similar traits, but obviously he doesn't understand it, and so he isn't really able to, I want to say, manage it. So he had a couple of meltdowns. I think more than a couple, to be honest. He had quite a few meltdowns, and I struggle in how to correctly respond to these meltdowns. I just get overwhelmed with them, and in the end I had to skip the swimming that we had booked just to go back to the caravan and have just some me time and do a bit of meditating and stuff like that, which helped. I mean, it doesn't help that I'm doing some work experience tomorrow on a film set. First time ever as a runner, and that's got me really anxious. I mean, I'm excited, really excited, but also so bloody worried. Just don't want to mess it up, and yeah. And also obviously meeting new people and stuff like that, and no, so there's that. But we're back home now, so that's something. Back in my safe space. So I think I'm gonna order a pizza, as that's my comfort food. That's my chill food. So I can just have like a nice chill night, having some pizza, ready for tomorrow. Which, like I said, I'm anxious about, but I am also excited about. So, fingers crossed. I don't think life with me is particularly easy. For instance, I have my strict sleeping routines, so because I work nights, so I have to go to sleep at certain times, wake up at certain times, and this means looking after the kids falls mostly to Gabby. I also struggle to grasp what's usually considered simple tasks, like I only learnt to use the washing machine within the last couple of years. Before that it just went straight over my head, but even now I can only use it when it's on certain settings. And of course there's my huge culmination of possessions and collections.
Autism is just when someone's wired a bit differently, so they think about things bit differently. They react a bit differently to different stimuli, for example. Having an autistic partner can be difficult because he has such strong interests in his things. So, for example, with Andy, it's films, and we have a lot of films in the house, to the point where we have lost our dining room to just bookcases of his films. But it's also interesting because seeing how someone can get that focus and become so involved in something, and how it can make them so happy, is like interesting to see. But it does take over your life a little bit. Like with Andy, he likes his DVDs to all be perfect. So once he bought one, and then he discovered it was meant to have a cardboard sleeve on it, so he actually was really upset about that it was missing it, and I had to take it back to the shop and try and explain to the person in the shop that I wanted to exchange it. Well, I didn't want to exchange it, I just wanted a cardboard sleeve, but they said they can't just take a cardboard sleeve off, so they had to exchange the item for the same item, just so that it had a cardboard sleeve on it.
Right, 1, it's a Blu-ray, not a DVD, and 2, it was a 3D lenticular cover. Look at it. It's awesome.
But it can be interesting, and it's like discovering a new way of looking at things, like little things that I might not have paid attention to, but he notices. And there's the anxiety side of it, like if we want to go out somewhere as a family, to like maybe an event, but we have to plan it so much to make sure that we're trying to go when it's not a busy time, and that we know the way there, and that I've checked that I know the way there, because he gets stressed about the route. We're going to get lost. The kids are going to get lost if it's busy. So I have to like sort of adapt to all these different scenarios that may not happen, but I have to make sure that I've got a plan in place for if they did happen, to make him feel more comfortable. And it can be stressful, but at the same time, it's helped me gain these skills that I might not have. So it's helped me develop as a person. What makes Daddy special?
Because he's different from everyone else.
What do you think autism is?
It's a way of people thinking differently. Because if everyone thought the same, they would think the exact same things.
What would you say to another child who had just found out their parent was autistic? What would you tell them, like if they were feeling a bit scared about it?
Don't worry, because mine is too. My daddy is autistic too, but I'm not scared.
Why not?
Well, I'm not scared. It's because it's part of who my daddy is, and it doesn't change him.
So, I was supposed to be working as a runner on a film in Seaton Carew. I can't really go into too much information about it because it's confidential at present, because it's an ongoing production. But yeah, a friend of mine let me
have some work experience as a runner, which is, I mean, a great opportunity. But yeah, so yeah, I was supposed to be doing yesterday and today, and so I did yesterday, and I really struggled with my anxiety and the issues I have because of my autism. Like the being overwhelmed, overstimulated, that sort of thing. Yeah, there was a lot of people, and even then it wasn't even like as the producer pointed out to me, he said this is like relatively small, but for me it was just there was too many people. I'm used to working with small groups when I do my films, which are like nothing compared to that. I'm the only crew. It's me with a camera and a couple of actors, and I know them already, so I'm comfortable with them. And with this, I didn't know them, and I'm not good with new people, and they seemed lovely, but I really struggle with new people. Lots of new people, and yeah. So, to my disappointment, and probably the disappointment of the producer, I've had to sit out with today. I don't feel I can mentally cope doing another day, and it's really saddening because it's all I've wanted to do for the last 10 years is work on a proper film set, and it's making me reevaluate my choices. I just feel pathetic, and it's really rubbish. Just yeah, I'm really disappointed in myself.
A thing I've encountered is neurotypical people using neurodiverse conditions flippantly in everyday conversation. Things like, I'm a bit OCD about that. Or even, I think I've got a bit of that autism. Now, I'm not typically offended by stuff, but I do understand how this kind of thing can cause offence, because at the end of the day, it is a disability, and no one would ever say, I think I've got a bit of that paralysis. In the past, autism has been treated with a variety of barbaric techniques. These include electroconvulsive therapy, LSD, and behavioural modification. Prior to the discovery of autism in the early 1900s by Autism Me, treatments were somewhat archaic. In medieval times, autistic people were considered to be possessed by demons, and as such were subjected to exorcisms. This is just some of what I've discovered through researching. This is just the tip of the iceberg, as autism has such a vast and colourful history. This is probably why in today's society people still have a stigma about it. In some cases, some people choose to not even go and get assessed because they see it as this big bad thing. This isn't helped by the media's single view portrayal of autism. When I was diagnosed autistic, one of the early questions I asked myself was, what's my special ability? As I'd grown up with Rain Man as the predominant media representation of autism. Now this left me thinking, I can't be autistic. Not really. because I didn't fit this stereotype. This savant portrayal is arguably the most famous and well-known depiction of autism, but it's not true for everyone, because autism has many faces.
I think in the media as well, there's not enough, you know, like on your programmes, you know, your soaps and stuff like that. I don't think autism has been on programmes like that. I don't think it's shown on programmes like that, and I think it should be, because there's been some very talented people with autism, savants they call them, high-end intelligence, you know, mind-blowing stuff, people who can do maths equations, people who can, you know, recall decks and decks of cards and that sort of thing, you know what I mean, some very, very intelligent people. So I think it should be, celebrated. It should be celebrated.
I did psychology as a background, but had discounted being autistic because I had empathy. And I started to look into it again with Caitlin, because she was like really selective with eating and things like that. I just accommodated and accepted it. And I started to look, and it was through looking through her and then finding stuff, it clicked. Where I got that from was I went into psychology, based a lot of us do, trying to understand ourselves, and it was in the 90s, which was height of triads of impairment and mind blindness, and autistic people don't have theory of mind, we don't have empathy, we treat people like inanimate objects, just sit there and all of this lot, and that wasn't really me.
So, like, with the media portrayal of autism, it's always very linear as well, and just like everybody, every single person who has autism is completely different to the other. It's not this, it's not like this Rain Man portrayal that it's made out to be in the media, which I think can be very both patronising to people with a diagnosis and makes people in wider society be ill-informed about what people with autism are like. Like I said before, it's just an alternative way of thinking about things. I think one of the most difficult things for people with autism is how disabling society can be, rather than their own sort of ways of thinking.
I think people should understand autism a lot more. I think it's maybe something that could be taught in schools, you know what I mean, because, you know, autistic children do go to mainstream school, and, you know, it starts with educating young people. You know, if the older generation are too ignorant, then start with the younger people and do it in school. You know, work with kids in school. You know, find out what the autistic child's talents are and see if it can be developed and encouraged and grown.
I think the media has come a long way since I was a child. I don't ever recall having a TV show which had an autistic character in it. But I've seen on CBeebies when I've sat with the kids and watched it, like the likes of Pablo, and it opens up that ability to have a conversation about autism and the awareness that there are people out there who are autistic. But Pablo is just one example of what autism can be like. It's actually the stereotype view that I had of it, but obviously finding out that Andy was autistic and then looking into it is just such a broad spectrum, and there's so many different examples, and there's a long way to come with the media to discover and represent all those different sort of characteristics and different ways in which autistic people can be, because they're not just one set way.
I tend to watch things about autism. Things don't fit all the time for, like, people will say, oh, you should watch this, and I'll watch it, and I'm like, yeah, it's not how I like. The media are like, right, okay, that's autism and that's not. No, bullshit.
I've found that in recent years there's been an increase in diverse representation of autism in the media, with things like the Netflix series Atypical, the Pixar Spark short Loop, CBeebies Pablo, and the 2017 Power Rangers film. That said, there is a distinct lack in representation for autistic females. This could be partly due to the autistic research in the past being always based on cisgender white males. But hopefully we'll continue to move forward with our research and our understanding, as well as our representation in the media. So I got a new book yesterday, and it's the third in a series of Greek mythology books written by Stephen Fry. Now, I like my books and my DVDs and just pretty much everything to be uniform and matching, especially if it's part of a series. So I'll show you the first one. Mythos. That's what it looks like. Here's the second one. Heroes. They match pretty nicely. Put them next to each other on a shelf, they'll look good. Yep. Now, here's the third one. Troy. Doesn't have the circle thing in like the other two do, but that's fine, I can deal with that. Now, put them next to each other on a shelf. What? On this journey, I've learnt new things about being autistic. For instance, the preferred term is autistic rather than with autism. This is because to say you either have or are with autism suggests it's an addition to the person, like a piece of baggage you can pick up and put down, whereas being autistic is a part of who you are. You can't lose or get rid of it. It's just how your brain works. Being autistic can make life hard. We all know that. But it also has its good points. It can make you look at the world differently and take enjoyment out of the simple things. For me, I love the sound of a ticking clock or watch. A typewriter. Rolling dice. And the crackle of an old record. My hope is that someone else also starting out on their journey might watch this documentary and it might help them feel better about themselves the way it's helped me. Even just meeting new people and seeing their joy about collecting things the way I do has made me feel like I'm no longer on my own. I'm now part of a community. I now know that being autistic shouldn't pose the question of how much of me is me, because I'm all me and autism is part of me. I'm Andy and I am autistic.